Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. I am Steve, joined here with Pascal. How's it going, Pascal?
Yeah, it's going fine. Thanks for asking.
Going fine. And first of all, as always, we'll go over our weeks, and then we're going to delve into probably, because sometimes we end up talking and we end up changing our minds of what we're going to delve into, but criticism and dealing with criticism, and potentially specifically talking about online criticism, because I think a lot of us in this media age put ourselves out there, whether it's our physique, our thoughts, our program, and we get criticism sometimes, and it can be difficult. So we'll delve into that afterwards. But first of all, Pascal's cutting. How's the cut going? I know you lost tons in the first kind of week or so. How's that slowed?
I mean, it's slowed down, which was to be expected, right? I mean, the first 1 or 2 weeks don't really tell you that much. When you are dropping tons of weight, it is a good indicator that you are in a caloric deficit most of the time. Sometimes when you really change everything up in terms of your meal plan or structure, you can actually see some weight gain, which I experienced when at the beginning of my contest prep. I know that, where I gained like 2 kilograms in the first couple of weeks, but more so because I was just eating tons of veggies and tons of fiber and stuff like that, which I don't do right now. I try to keep my fiber levels actually quite low. It's always a little bit complicated to track the fiber levels here in Germany, unfortunately, because many things are just included in the carbohydrate on the food labels and not really written out as fiber. So it's more so a guesstimation, but they are in the ranges of 35 up to 50 at some days. So it is absolutely acceptable. And I go more so by my well-being, that I'm not really that bloated. I'm not really like at the end of the day only sorry for the information, farting all the time. And I'm feeling so much better with that. Like really, it's just like the last time I cut it, so the contest prep, it was just like not comfortable and convenient at all, especially when I was going to evening school every single day and sitting there with stomach cramps because we're eating so much fiber and veggies. I mean, at some point in the contest prep, that might be feasible and all right to do so, because it's what you need to do to keep yourself sane, to keep yourself on track. But right now, I mean, take a look at me. Take a look at that fluff. I mean, it's absolutely not necessary to stuff myself with veggies and keep myself sane. And I also want to learn again to accept the hunger signals, because right now I have the feeling that I'm a little bit afraid of being hungry. But yeah, that's in terms of the cut. In terms of the training, holy shit, it's going well. I mean, it's unbelievable. If you're following me on Instagram, I know I'm not that overly active, but every once in a while I'm posting some lifts of mine. And over the past weeks, I mean, nearly all of my lifts which have stalled over the past are just going constantly up. The squat is going up. The incline bench press is going up. It's just funny because Steve and I had a chat recently and we were just joking about that. My incline bench press is like Steve's normal bench press.
Yeah, it's like your incline's very strong. Anything nearing any sort of vertical off flat, well, pressing for me is terrible, but anything off flat is like, I just get so weak.
Yeah, mate, and last week I just hit like a massive PR in terms of my incline, because every single time I'm cutting, every single time I'm in a deficit, I'm losing a lot of strength on my bench, and that also led me to stalling or stagnating on my incline pressing as well. Right now it's just like I hit a PR of 10 repetitions for 100 kilograms on the incline, which is just like insane progress for me as well. Also, like with the squat, I mean, last week I squatted 8 repetitions for 170 kilograms, and it was good. I was a little bit nervous because it's just a massive achievement for me. I know the last time I was squatting in that ballpark is like 2 years ago when I prepared for a powerlifting meet, and I only squatted 175 kilograms for 3 repetitions with not that much of a good form as I had this time. I had way more control. It looked way more smoother, and I did it for 8 repetitions this time, right? And it's just like, it's going really well when it comes to training. Sure, I really still need to take care of my back, but I learned so much over the past year in terms of programming, what my body can handle, what I can actually program for my clients, what might be appropriate for them as well. And yeah, I think that there are every once in a while like these moments in your life that are key moments for you for kind of an enlightenment in your knowledge and experience. And even though that the last year was kind of full of failures, mistakes for me, I think you learn the most of your failures and your mistakes. And I made a massive jump in my knowledge, in my analytical experience as well. And I think that now, looking back in hindsight, I'm actually really grateful for everything that happened last year, because that just allows me to make even more progress right now. But yeah, that's about me. But when it comes to you, Steve, how's your head doing?
Well, I want to say, first of all, that's amazing to hear. I think anyone who's listening who likes Pascal will be absolutely very over the moon, to hear that everything's going so well. I really am, and I'm really glad to hear that you also, I think, the longer you are doing, like any job, the more experience you get doing it, the better and better you become. And you're kind of delving into working with more and more clients over the years, as am I. And it all, you keep learning and you keep getting better, and you keep being able to just, you see things. I know for myself, now I've been working online for so long, what used to take me hours to do some programming adjustments is just I can see that. This needs to change here, this blah, blah, blah. And it just becomes, it's kind of connecting the dots so much faster. So I can definitely appreciate that. So no, I'm very happy to hear that's going so well. But myself, so yeah, I'm in my second week of my third massing mesocycle. And in this mesocycle, I incorporated some metabolite techniques. So pump work to kind of hit that hypertrophy pathway, so I can get out some more volume as well. And it's very enjoyable and very hard, some of them. And one of them in particular challenged me to the point where I was getting incredible exertion headaches, I've deemed them to be, after doing some research and having some people kind of give me a hand with that. Where I was getting it felt like knives stabbing me in the back of my lower head. And if you're listening and you're like, I've had that when I've been working out really hard, you may well have been suffering an exertion headache. And then afterwards, it kind of, as your heart rate comes down and you calm down, it kind of goes away to a dull ache. The first time I experienced that was in my first week of training. I'd already done heavy squatting, some RDLs, and then I'd gone into a metabolite superset of Bulgarian split squats on the Smith machine into close stance Smith machine squats, and no rest between, constant tension. And it's incredible. The DOMs I had were insane, and my quads were so pumped. I was struggling to walk after it. It was, that as a superset is insane. But the awful thing was I got a exertion headache on my second set. And I thought it was just me because I was a bit under the weather. I'd been at home that weekend and I just wasn't feeling my best. I thought it was just a relation of sometimes you're a bit dehydrated when you're not well. And I just thought, I'm just getting a headache because my body's not in a good place. So the headache completely went, and I didn't have anything from it until this week. I did that exact same superset and it came on with vengeance. And the first time I kind of pushed through it, and this time again, I kind of pushed through it as best as I could, and it lasted. So the dull ache has just about gone today, and I did that on Thursday. So that's been Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 3 days or so, and it's virtually gone now, the dull ache. But the dull ache was just with me for days afterwards, and it was just like a constant headache, and it's just not enjoyable. And actually, exertion headaches, people don't exactly know what the cause of those are. It seems to be something related to like tension in the upper back, head position, dehydration, breathing. If you're using the Valsalva maneuver, big compound lifts, this can sometimes happen. Some people get it when they're like having sex as well, apparently. So,
then they get unconscious.
Yeah, that would be pretty. Like you're just that would ruin my whole mojo. Fortunately, I've managed to train with it, but just if I feel it coming on, I've just been like, right, I'm stopping that and going, like, I'll just leave the rep there. And I'm hoping tomorrow, like it's a complete rest day today and it's virtually gone. So I'm hoping tomorrow when I do legs, if I'm careful with things, it won't come on. I am a bit nervous about it and a bit anxious, but yeah, hopefully it's kind of like anything. If something's causing you pain, like it's an injury, like don't do that movement. Find something equivalent or something similar to work around it. And then if it's really bad, you have to rest. Because effectively, I think it's like whatever there is in the back of my head is inflamed, it's a bit damaged, and it needs time to recover. And the problem will come if I keep trying to work through it. And you can effectively, like, I don't want to do any kind of... I've had a bad head injury in the past. Fortunately, it's not in the same area, because if it was, I'd be very nervous that it was like bleeding of the brain or something. And I do want to see my doctor if I can, because we recently moved. I don't know how easy that's going to be, but I'd like to see my doctor just to make sure everything's okay there, because head injuries are not they're not funny. So that's how that's been going. But apart from that, things have been going really, really well. So training is just going great. I hit some flat bench PRs recently, which are basically, as we've established, equivalent to your incline bench PRs. But for me, benching's always been really, really hard. I've been emphasizing quads a lot. So hamstring work has been really minimal. I think I do like 4 sets of RDLs a week and like 6 sets of leg curls, and that's like it. And then quads take the rest. And it just made me realize how I am getting to a point with my training, especially for leg training, where if I can't push both quads and hamstrings in the same mesocycle, I just end up... But I at least have to have one day where I'm emphasizing quads, one day where I'm emphasizing hamstrings, and whether or not I think I hit my actual MRV for that muscle group, I'm not sure I really do.
So in that regard, so you took out normal deadlifts then? So conventional or sumo deadlifts? Yeah,
no deadlifting off the floor. Do Romanians twice per week, 2 sets. So spreading out that volume. So basically those 2 sets aren't very they're hard, but they're not. I could do
It's
more.
Funny because I wasn't aware that you did that, but we had recently in our Facebook group a discussion about conventional or sumo deadlifts, I think for hypertrophy. This is a discussion that comes up every once in a while, right? And I was always a little bit that made me realize that discussion. I didn't really participate too much into that discussion, but that made me just realize how much I'm still emotionally attached to the lifts itself.
Yeah.
Like squat, bench, and deadlift. Because I held on to the deadlifts for such a long time, but I also know that in terms of my back, I think that due to axial loading, heavy loadings from the squats and the deadlifts, is probably not the best for my traps to recover. And I took them out for this mesocycle now. So what I'm doing is at the first day, it's more quad dominant. Second day is more hamstring dominant. But instead of doing conventional deadlifts, which I have been doing in the past, I'm now only doing stiff leg deadlifts. Yeah. So not Romanian deadlifts, but really just from the floor, trying to be as straight as possible. And it gives me at least I have the feeling that it targets so much more my hamstrings and my lower body than my overall system. And I really don't need to, it really doesn't destroy me to the same extent such as deadlifts did. And I'm more and more going away from using the conventional or the sumo deadlifts for hypertrophy or for hypertrophic work, simply because I try to be more objective when it comes to exercise variation rather than being emotionally attached to it because I'm coming from a powerlifting background or I see other people doing them.
No, completely. And I actually co-authored a article on kind of the deadlifts make your legs grow, and yeah, we came to the same sort of conclusion that for hypertrophy, there's probably movements that you can use that are probably more superior. I know Menno Henselman isn't massive on the deadlift off the floor for hypertrophy. I actually don't know any experts who are like big on deadlifts for hypertrophy, like from the floor anyway. More so their variants like a deficit or rack pulls, not rack pulls, and Romanian deadlifts and things like that. So
no, absolutely, and I think that. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say they just literally beat the shit out of you.
Exactly, and this is like always when it comes to exercise variation, and we also had a discussion about the rack pulls. This is why we are laughing now. The risk reward of certain exercises simply not worth it, right? And we are not specifically talking about risk in terms of injuries, but also the overall downsides to a certain exercise, right? And what you then get out of that particular movement. And I think that, when it comes to deadlifts, the only reason really I kept them in was because of my ego and because I did like them, but they more so do destroy me than giving me the outcome I'm trying to achieve, right? And specificity comes into play here.
No, 100%. I think you can do them. You can use deadlifts in various ways to make them more hypertrophy based, like controlling the eccentrics, maybe doing a bit of a touch and go, making them a bit more RDL like in nature potentially. But yeah, I think for hypertrophy they're a bit overrated, and I think it's similar. I had the same with like low bar squats. I always did low bar, and then I switched to high bar because I was like, that's just more specific to my goals for hypertrophy, and I'm so glad I did.
Totally. And in regards to the deadlifts, just to touch one more time on that, I did all the things you just mentioned in terms of slow eccentric, slight touch and go, but still being overly in control of it. But still, it's so fucking taxing on the entire system. And in the end, you actually, what do you want to target with deadlifts? You don't want to, hopefully you're not doing it because you want to target your back, right? But I see it with many people who are slightly rounding their back, which then causes a little bit more stress on the entire system, right? But I actually want to have it as a lower body movement. In that regard, as you already said, there's certainly or probably other exercises who will give you a little bit more bang for your buck. And I've made the transition and I will stick with it for a longer period of time now. That doesn't mean that I will do it forever and never deadlift again in my life. But right now I'm feeling a little bit better with it. And I also have the feeling that gives me more of a hypertrophic stimulus than deadlifts per se. Sure, we always need to keep in mind what you feel doesn't mean that this is the case. But once again, I just think that it gives you more bang for your buck, and that's basically it.
Yeah, I personally think a lot of people end up doing deadlifts off the floor and then having to do all of their bent over row, their rowing, chest supported, and you could do like a bent over row and an RDL and probably get better overall hypertrophy stimulus than doing just a deadlift and then like chest supported rowing. I don't know. It's probably very, very similar. It's minutia talk, but it's interesting nonetheless. And then, so training, I'm hoping next week I'll be going into my third week of this mesocycle. I'm hoping I can push it hard again, but I'm going to be a bit on the soft side. And if anything, if I just match performance from my last week or slightly edge out a little bit, I'm happy as long as I keep this headache under control and I don't have to deload early. And then other weeks I'll start pushing it once it's kind of gone. Nutrition wise, my carbs have come up to like, some days I've pushed up to 650 grams, but I'm hovering between 600 and 650.
God damn, mate.
My weight's really weird. Yeah, eating literally lots of cereal. I always find it funny. We were talking about this before, Pascal, where people are like, how do you keep your fats down? Like, I'm staying around 50. They sometimes creep up a bit above, sometimes below. So how do you keep your fats down? It's like, well, like there's so many carb sources that just have no fat, like cereal. I'm eating a lot of cereal, bagels, rice, bread in
I
general.
just want you to share that story with the people as well, because so Steve and I talked about it, and I just brought up an example of what I experienced like recently, because I really felt down, and also psychologically I wanted a refeed. I didn't need it, but I wanted a refeed, right? So I loaded on massively on the carbs. I ended up like at 1,000 grams of carbs, and my fats were at 44 grams. And I could do that each and every single day. I swear I could do that, right? And it wasn't really an effort I needed to do to be in that area. It just like happened. And then, oh, yeah, my fats are quite low still. Easy.
I think most of the time it's people are attached to certain meals that they don't want to remove, or certain foods. So it's like, oh, but I have to have like a lot of oats to make up my carbs. And it's like, well, if you're going to have a lot of oats, that comes with it fats. I have to have a protein bar. I have to have some like beef, some burgers or whatever they are. I want to go out for this meal. And it's like, yeah, when you incorporate all of that, those have to's, quote unquote, then you're going to struggle. But for Pascal and myself, we're in control of like our entire diet. We don't get fed by someone else. We don't have to attend to other people's kind of food preferences. I do a little bit with Charlotte sometimes, but most of the time I make it work for me. On the weekends I let my fats go up, just so people are aware. Like I think yesterday I don't know if you saw it, Pascal, or anyone on Instagram who follows me, the Venezuelan grub, which is hilarious. I told Pascal I was eating Venezuelan grub, and he searched it and it came up with a grub, which you'd expect. And I was like, oh, that's English slang for like food, or like, food. So,
I was so surprised, because I was really thinking like, he's about to eat some beetles, right? And I was just like, holy shit, what is going on? And Steve was just saying like, yeah, we had it a couple of times when we were in Mexico, and it was amazing. Okay.
It was absolutely, like, I literally laughed out loud when Pascal sent me that image. It was just the best. So yeah, that was like fried plantains. It was like shredded beef, and that obviously was slightly higher fat. But it's like, yeah, I can still enjoy those whilst for the most part having a high carb diet. But my body weight's really weird. I don't know if people who follow me again on Instagram, I post my weight every single day pretty much. And at the start of the week, I was all the way down like under low 180s, and I'd been up to like almost 185s. And then yesterday I was 185, and then today it's gone down to the 180, like low 180s again. It's just, my body weight is, because of my edema that I suffer from, like around my ankles, I tend to hold on to lots of water retention. I think a lot of the listeners know that. It makes my scale weight, like, it just makes it so unhelpful sometimes. So I really try and not focus too much on that. More so focus that over time it's going up, and I feel like I'm not like holding back in terms of the food front. I prefer to be slightly over full than slightly under full. So I was ecstatic to see the 185. So I was like, that's cool. That's fucking good progress.
Yeah, really. Totally.
So that's exciting. So yeah, that's pretty much where I am with things in terms of food and training. And I guess we can delve into the topic of taking criticism.
Yeah, totally.
So I think this stems from our discussion. This stems from maybe our Facebook group a little bit, in terms of there's been discussions in there, and sometimes people are very critical of people's questions or approaches, and sometimes it can get maybe a bit out of hand. Some people need a bit of a softer touch. Other people need to actually be a bit more of an adult about things and realize that criticism comes with, when you ask questions, you should accept it. I think even myself, as someone who puts themselves out there a lot on like Instagram, on YouTube, and sometimes I'll get criticized. I think there was even a YouTube comment a while ago on my interview technique on podcasts, and how I was nodding and agreeing with Mike Israetel, and I was a dickhead for always doing that, and should challenge Mike Israetel, who has a PhD in exercise physiology and is a doctor. And who am I to challenge him, really? I agree with virtually all of the guests, because for the most part they're exactly spot on. But regardless, like I can take that to heart a little bit, and Pascal helps me because he's very good at kind of like, Steve, that doesn't mean shit. Like, who is that person? So yeah, I think we're good to discuss on this, because I think we both feel it from different angles. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on anything specifically, Pascal.
I think when it comes to that, we definitely need to separate between the context that is given. I mean, when it's criticism in a Facebook group or when there's criticism between you and a client, or the other way around, or when it's simply criticism in the normal world when your boss is coming to you, right? This is always context dependent then. I think, I think my Ruby was there. I don't know. It's always a little bit context dependent, but in our situation, what we are talking about, I think we should rather focus on online discussions, because I think that client relationships are a little bit more individual. Everyone needs to be treated differently.
Yes.
Everyone needs to be treated differently in certain periods of their journey. So when you're close to the stage, sure, sometimes you need to, I hate to say that, but you need to keep certain things for yourself as a coach, because it could potentially do more harm than good. And being absolutely honest about certain things. And there's always the nocebo effect as well that can play a role and can do more damage than actually good when it comes to being an educator and being a mentor for your client as well. So that is always a little bit individualized and context dependent. So what we are talking about, I would say, let's just put it down to the social medias, interacting with each other on Facebook groups or Instagram or certain things like these. Or what do you reckon?
No, completely, because it is, you could talk on this for ages in terms of clients. You have different clients who respond differently to critiques, and some of them you have to be very softy with. Other ones you can be like, they need that hard line. And again, like, I was just thinking, for me, with the comment on like, at different times in their phase, like when they're deep in a diet, they're very emotional, or like if they're going to a powerlifting meet and they're close to like the meet, you don't want to go, oh, your form's looking shit on that. Like, that's going to absolutely destroy them. So yeah, I think context, let's say online discussions, and yeah, kind of start off with that. And I think in my opinion, or not my opinion, in my approach, I think I actually do sometimes try and have a bit of an understanding for the type of person. So sometimes when people are typing out their question, maybe even if I don't know anything about them, sometimes I can get a bit of an inkling of what they're like from the way they write it out, or at least I don't assume anything too much. Like my approach is generally a bit of a softer approach. Like I'll always assume that they're wanting me to be a bit like babying them a little bit, and I'll be a little bit less short and blunt with them, unless they want that, or unless it becomes obvious. And then I will be honest, sometimes the discussion can start off a bit soft, and after a while it feels like they're just not getting it, and then I will start being like, this is it, like, stop going. But I try my best. It can be really hard because, as we've noticed online, and why we do like Skype consultations with potential clients, a lot can be lost in translation over English words, like online, especially when like your mother's tongue is in English. It can be easily like confused. So yeah, that can be really tricky sometimes, and that's why I think for us, because we do have that big group on Facebook, it can be hard because we're kind of like, I said, we're like the mum and dad of the group almost. And we do kind of want to protect people, but also understand and help others grow. So yeah, I guess that's some comments on that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, in that regard, it's always important also to know that, I don't know, Steve, have you ever heard about the 5 axioms?
No.
Is there something in England that is called that, perhaps? Because I just know it from Germany when it comes to communication. Okay. Right? And well, have you ever heard of Friedrich Schultz von Thun?
I have heard of that name, yeah.
Okay, it's about everything about communication, right? So basically, I just keep it real brief. We have 2 models. This is once the 5 axioms, and then the other model is from Friedrich Schultz von Thun, where there's a sender and someone who's listening, but it's always back and forth. And then there are, in one message, there are always sub messages, right? It's the tonality, the words being used, right? And then the one who's listening to the message or who's reading the message can always just interpret the message based on their experience, based on their mood, and based on their perception. That doesn't mean that this is or was the intention of the sender of the message.
Yeah.
And thus, there are always two in a discussion, and there are always two when there's a back and forth, a debate or something, which can be a little bit complicated sometimes because everything impacts a discussion, like the mood, the well-being, the environment, the words being used, the language. And thus, it can easily be misinterpreted, especially when one of these blocks falls away, such as tonality, right? I mean, reading something can be dictated by your well-being and by your mood. Right? When you're in a mood of being angry or hating the world, right, then you only see negativity in every single wording or every single sentence. But if you're in a state of well-being, when you're happy, everything is going well, you have puppies around you, babies around you, right? Then everything is just
not babies.
Like babies and puppies. No, then everything is just looking bright, right? And then no matter what type of message it was, you can interpret it in a completely different way. Thus, I think that most of the time it's simply a miscommunication between the sender and the one who's listening or receiving the message. And that just creates then a miscommunication, unless it's absolutely obvious that the sender is only having one intention in mind. That is just like saying, okay, you are a piece of shit. we probably all know what that means most of the time, and it's really just meant as a joke or something, right? But it's a completely different way to say, okay, let's just say, we'll take that example, you are full of shit, what you're saying. This example can be used or phrased in a completely different way, still having the same meaning, but way more appropriate in an adult and mature fashion, which doesn't offend the receiver of the message. And I think that this is so important, that there's a responsibility from both parties participating in a discussion to have some sense of empathy and some sense of maturity about a discussion. And yeah.
No, I was smiling and nodding throughout that, because we've even had it ourselves because of the way both of us communicate to each other online. And sometimes because we leave each other voicemails, and sometimes you'll write something across to me and I'll speak it across and be like, I read that like Steve, like in a really like critical way, whereas Pascal probably, if he was saying it in his tonality and his voice, would have said it in a different way. And so now, rather than me jump at those things, now because I know Pascal's like that, I laugh at them, because I'm like, at first I'm like, Pascal, you dick, why are you saying it like that? And I'm like, oh, actually, Pascal's probably saying it like this. Right, got you. So no, that's why it's really funny. But I think completely online, whereas there's people kind of giving feedback or commenting on stuff, and from their perspective, they're not saying anything negative. It doesn't seem like they're being hypercritical. But everyone else reading it is like, you sound like an absolute knob. So then if you don't have the ability to sit back and assess that, then I don't know, it's really difficult. But I think most of us have the ability to type something out that's kind of our first inkling, and then just reread it, think about your comments, think about how other people might perceive those, and then just retype it. Because I've done that. I've commented and then I've edited it like, actually that sounds a bit harsh, like I don't mean it to be like that. And that's just human communication. That's just being a good communicator. And I think for coaches and for us, Pascal, it's like second nature, because we have to do that with our clients, because if we do it in the wrong way, it can come across really badly. But for people online, if you want to have fruitful discussions with people, if you actually want to help people as well, you need to adjust your approach sometimes, not just be so like black and white and critical.
No, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because recently we had a discussion in our Facebook group. Obviously, we take all of our anecdotes from our Facebook group. No, it was like I was on a date, basically, right? And there was this girl, she was into fitness as well. And because we are both into fitness, of course, we are talking about nutrition as well. So at some point, the discussion came up about coffee consumption. And she was basically not drinking any kind of coffee because she said that it's unhealthy. I was just the person I am. I just couldn't shut my mouth and leave it like that. I was just basically saying, okay, that's not entirely true. Perhaps there's some toxicity in the dosage, but from the current literature, yada, yada, yada. It's not about the context in it for itself, but it's more so about the communicative aspect of it, right? And the reason I then put the story up on our Facebook group is because I think that my way of communicating with this girl was inappropriate. She was in her world of beliefs, and I tried to prove her wrong. And of course, most of the people in that situation won't be like, oh, yeah, you got a point. Please send me the scientific literature because I'm obviously wrong. And I want to learn more. No, they feel trapped. They feel like trapped in a corner, and they try then only to defend themselves. They are not looking for a fruitful discussion anymore. But it wasn't her fault. Mm-hmm. It was more so my fault because I was the one confronting her. And I could have done a better job in that situation, either completely ignoring, or not ignoring that, but just leave her in the way that she believes what is right or wrong, because it's absolutely fine, right? And I certainly can't change her mind in one single sitting. Let's call it that. I'm not a psychotherapist or anything like that, so it's inappropriate to call it that. But in one single day, I'm probably not going to convince her from the other side of things. And I didn't want to change her mind or something, but wanted her to see the other side as well. And was my fault the way I phrased the sentences, that she felt trapped in the corner and she defended herself, because I could have simply asked her questions rather than throwing false statements at her, right? Like asking, why exactly do you think that it's unhealthy? Why is it that you are, well, you get the point. And I think that was more so my responsibility to actually lead the communication then in that area, rather than expecting her to fall into my rules, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this reminds me of like How to Win Friends and Influence People, or something along those lines, like one of those books where it tells you how, like, to be a good debater, you kind of have to meet and have a middle ground, and find, like, you almost say what they say to you back, and you like, so you think coffee's unhealthy, right? And then they have to explain themselves, and you fully understand their argument, so they feel like they've been listened to, and then you can give your kind of piece. And be like, but it's fine if you kind of still feel that way. I think I think someone who I highly regard at debating like that is Mike Israetel. Like, whenever I listen to him in kind of roundtables or in discussions with people, and I see him comment back and forth, he's incredibly good at making you feel like he's like you're listened to and he's taken your point on board, but equally astonishingly good at destroying your argument and making it very clear that he has a very good thing to say.
Yeah, I think it comes down to all the people who are doing or conducting research. You can really also hear it with someone like Brad Schoenfeld, how he phrases certain findings. He's really specific about it, right? And it's so funny when he's on board or on some podcast as a guest, and he's been asked certain findings. He's always like, yeah, it depends. What exactly do you mean with X, Y, and Z, right? And then he always brings up okay, studies are only there to show us or give us an idea of the puzzle. The more findings we have, the clearer it gets. But right, there's always a but. And I think that you can see with a lot of people who are researchers that they always try to keep an open mind, always try to not look at things black and white, because there are always other alternatives as well. When it comes to communication and communicative skills, especially online, don't just expect that everyone needs to fall into your line, but try to, as you already said, try to find perhaps a middle ground. And when you want to help people, and this is something I apply more and more for myself, is that I don't just spit out the answer, but I'm trying to ask them a question, because most of the time people already know the answer, or I have a glimpse idea of what might be the reason for it. And if you can lead them into the quote unquote right direction or right answer, then it will stick with them so much more than just giving them or delivering them the answer to the front of their door, because after 5 minutes, they have probably forgotten about it if they haven't thought about it themselves.
No, 100%. I've done that kind of trick, as it were, with like clients before, or like when they're trying to approach certain occasions, they're like, what should I do in this occasion? And I just go back with, what do you think would be an appropriate thing to do? And they come back with exactly what I would have said. And I'm like, do that. And then because they've kind of come up with the solution, not only do they learn more because they've had to think about it and not just been spoon fed, like you've just said, but they're much more empowered to go and do it, because they're like, actually, I decided that. This is what I wanted to do. So
absolutely,
that's
good
great
point on that one. You are encouraging the people to really also believe in themselves, believe in their certain level of knowledge, but also encourage them to go out and ask questions, but take the time to really think about it before that, because perhaps you would be surprised about yourself how much you actually know already.
It frustrates the hell out of me when I see people ask questions where it's absolutely clear they've not spent a single second even considering that they might know the answer, or that the answer is really like, very simple, and they just literally want that spoon-fed thing. I think in a recent episode of the 3DMJ podcast, they kind of had a round table, and Andrea was talking about these questions that people will ask her, and she'll often say, okay, just could you go through to the 3DMJ like vault and ask the question there, and we'll cover it in an episode of the podcast. And she's like, they won't go there because they just want to be like, they often just want the answer right in front of them there and then, and if they can't get it, they're like, fuck it, I'm not going to get the answer.
Do you think that this is also because in that certain situation, when I come back at them with a question on their question instead of giving them the answer, some people get quite offended by it? Do you think that it is because of that reason, because they simply don't want to think about it, that they are kind of a little bit reacting in an aggressive manner because they want to be spoon-fed?
Yeah, it's really funny. Even Eric said this, like often he'll have to ask them questions to help answer their question, and they're like getting annoyed. Why are you asking me questions? Just give me the damn answer. It's like, it's not that easy. And after a while, I think once you've been in kind of fitness for a while and you follow people for a while, you realize it's not that easy. Or you'll go and find someone who will give you a black and white dogmatic answer, and they'll be your leader, and you'll just be a disciple, and that'll be it. And you do get those people. The problem is then when they diverge and they then try and help other people, they then have those black and white answers that then don't really help anyone learn and develop, because like we both know, there is no like one answer to everything. It's very often multiple answers potentially.
I think what's really important to point out here is that we always have someone with who starts a discussion or a debate, or who has simply a question that wants to have it covered, right? And there's always someone who's trying to help or who's willing to get into the debate or discussion, right? And I think that once again, it's the responsibility of the two to keep it on a respectful and mature level. And it's so easy to drift off because of the quote unquote security or anonymity of the internet, right? You can't hide behind that barrier. But I mean, you are still dealing with real human beings. And I think that this is really important to keep in mind, that I always say that treat other people the way you want to be treated. And if you don't, I mean, then you can't really expect when people are actually getting quite offended by you online and giving you shit for that as well. I mean, yeah, once again, I think that's, you want to be treated as an adult, treat others as an adult as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that was a really good point, and almost a point we could end on, like, treat others like you'd want to be treated, because there's so many people online that just don't, and they have no respect for other individuals, and they feel like, often I feel like sometimes people feel like they're helping others, but in fact they're just trying to show off. They're just trying to show their superiority, their knowledge. And I often see that now, because there is so much information freely online. A lot of, I would say probably more so the younger crowd, feel like they can be an expert in a field, or they've read or heard an expert talk about this specific thing, and then feel like they can go and tell people that that's the right answer. And they're taking the expert's understanding of it out of context, and they're maybe applying it to the wrong context, and they have no experience with it. They're not an expert in that area, but because they've read one article by a certain individual, they feel like they can then tell everyone it's the right answer, and they then can be very arrogant about that. And it's kind of like, no, there's like, you and me, Pascal, we don't talk very confidently about subjects that we're not very confident about, because that's just the wrong place. And often in the group, I won't, in like group discussions or in any questions, I won't try and answer it if I have no experience in that field. Or often I'll just be like, seek a specialist, because often people are asking questions that should be answered by a doctor, and they're seeking people who are not doctors for advice.
Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to add, because it just jumped to my head. Thiago made such an amazing post on one of our posts on the Facebook group.
Thiago from Renaissance, the intern.
Exactly. Oh man. And that is, when it comes to being annoyed by certain questions or topic related to nutrition, and that people fall for fads and stuff like that. Just imagine how annoying it must be for someone who's into, I don't know, quantum physics or something like that. And then someone like me would come up, yeah, I've read on the internet that this is the case. That must be quite annoying for them as well, right? But because of nutrition and training and being fit is first and foremost so trendy right now, right? And it's a part of everyone's life, daily activity and nutrition. It's kind of normal that people fall for stuff like that, and that there are so many more people involved in that. So don't be too annoyed by simple questions, because you can't expect everyone having the same passion for that field such as you, and you can't expect that everyone has the same knowledge and also not the same passion to learn that material. This is why coaches like us are there, because we are specialists in the field to which people can come because they don't want to learn that stuff, or they need help in that specific area, right? And it just made me, I think that Thiago just brought up such a good point, that it's nearly only in nutrition training that people get so annoyed by these fads that come up. But basically, you never think about a car mechanic who's reading stuff online, or who has to deal with the people who approach him because the car is broken and they have heard, or just think about the doctors.
Yeah.
Like with all the internet diagnoses that are coming out, like everyone thinks they have cancer, right? Because they self-treated themselves online, and now it's about time to approach the doctor. Just imagine how much shit the doctors have to deal with on a daily basis because someone read online X, Y, and Z, right? And I think that you shouldn't be too annoyed or lose your temper because there might be a simple question in your eyes, but perhaps it isn't a simple question for the individual who's asking the question.
Yeah, it's always important to keep perspective and know your roots, where you came from, because we all have come from nowhere in terms of like our knowledge base. Absolutely. So even when you come further from that, you have to remember there are people that are in that position, and you can help them expedite their progress if you do it in an appropriate way and don't just give them kind of asshole feedback so they don't feel like they can ask the question. Awesome. I think that was a good discussion. Hopefully it's helped some people out, both on the answering question and answering questions. Asking and answering, and just interacting online, and hopefully giving some people some perspective on how we do it and adjust our behaviors accordingly.
But it wasn't really talking about how to deal with criticism, was it?
No, I guess not. It was more, I don't know. Hopefully it was a helpful discussion.
Yeah, more so being a decent communicator.
Yeah. Just look at Brad Schoenfeld and Mike Israetel, basically. Morph.
Yeah.
And Eric Helms is also good. They're all good. Anyway, thank you guys for listening.
The three of them.
Do we have anything else to announce? By the time this comes out, we should have something exciting to announce.
Sign up for the seminar.
So what did we decide to call it? The Scientific Principles of Advanced Hypertrophy. I wanted to call it Advanced Muscular Hypertrophy because I was like, muscular sounds awesome, but I was like, that's a bit long, isn't it? So that is what we're calling it. Jared Feather and Mike Israetel are coming to London in July. I think it's the 14th and 15th they'll be here that weekend, and we are hosting them, and we're doing a hypertrophy seminar, which is going to be exclusive to us. Really advanced, awesome concepts, and there's going to be a VIP day. It's going to be amazing. The first time we did it, I mean, actually, even back the first time we did it, when I first did it with Mike Samuels, it was fantastic. Next time with Pascal, it was insane. It was incredible. And this one's going to be even better. So very excited for that. So we'll put a link, there'll be a link below somewhere for you guys to kind of get information about that, about tickets and stuff. So yeah, that's super exciting. I can't wait for that.
No, it's going to be great. And once again, check it out. You can, when you follow the link, you will find a video there from the last time we actually made the conference, just to tease you a little bit and get you excited as well. And then you simply want to actually join and participate.
Awesome. Yeah. So that teaser, you'll learn a lot from the teaser, let alone actually come to the seminar. So yeah, cheers guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.